great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I'm looking forward to getting into your stories and your lineage, so I appreciate your time.
Sure, sure. I appreciate yours. I have to tell you, I'm not a jazz person, so
Well,
that's your thing, right?
it is one of my things, but also famous interviews is another offshoot. So it's
Okay, well, I'm
you're
glad to be put in with famous people, but okay.
absolutely, yeah. You're definitely in the wheelhouse. So let's
Oh
begin.
boy, I don't know.
A lot of pressure. So
Yeah,
let's
certainly.
begin our journey here with something that I'm sure we're all getting fatigued with, which is talking about COVID, but it was such a central part of our lives. How did you survive that COVID time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Oh, okay. Well, I it really didn't change that much. I think that it changed things in terms of my journalism because I had to, everything was just online. Everything switched to online. So if I was working for a print edition, then I had to write, online and learn how to do that. Well, I knew how to do that, but some publications, one of the publications that I worked for was just moving from print to online, and they had no choice. They had to. And you did interviews online instead, the phone. You use the phone much more. You couldn't do in-person interviews. That was definitely a change in terms of my writing. It didn't impact me that much because my book came out in after that. So I was already able to do in-person interviews, in-person talks. So that part didn't affect me, but I'm sure everything went online. Everything was digital at that point, and I was writing for some digital publications after that. So some people went, print just wasn't the same after that. Print
Yeah.
journalism was not, if you weren't digital, too bad, get
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh. That's right. So I know you've been in writing your whole life, but if we focus right now in 2024 and I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids was
Mm.
curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I'm a journalist. I write for news publications and healthcare publications, and I also wrote a novel. And mostly they're going to be interested in that
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So they're very intrigued by somebody who writes books. They only think about their own books, but career day would be meet the author or meet the journalist. They might not know what journalism is. Meet the writer.
Yeah.
Let's just sum it up. That's really what I am anyway. So
So,
if
yeah, no. So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
uh, I think I wanted to be a musician at a certain point. I did like penmanship. I did like my writing, just the physical writing. I liked writing essays. I don't know if that started in the third grade. I don't think I had career goals in the third grade. Maybe further along, certainly by high school. But when I was growing up, you didn't have to make these kind of decisions early on. But earlier than becoming a journalist, I was thinking I might be a musician. I don't know why. Because I like to write the lyrics. That's why. Because I
Uh,
like to write poetry. I was writing poetry. I like to write lyrics, but I really wasn't that great on the guitar to be able to sustain that. So that it took off from there.
so talk to me a little bit about your history. Take me back to where you were born and raised. How did journalism become your focal point and ultimately writing a book? How did all of this become your world?
I grew up on Long Island, New York, and like I said, I had a fascination with just my penmanship and calligraphy, and I come from an artistic background. Both in terms of culturally, I was in the orchestra and the chorus, and my father was a blacksmith. I'll write about him for my second book. But my family were very creative people. So my mom was a silversmith. So I had that. And I took a journalism. someplace along the line, I took journalism. In high school, a friend of mine said she's going to pursue journalism, and she was popular. And I thought, this sounds cool. I can, I like to write. I like to write the essays. I liked reading. And so I said I could make a living out of writing. That sounds cool. So I took journalism and journalism class in my high school yearbook. And I wrote all the copy. They just were stunned when I read my opening copy that I wanted to pitch to for the yearbook on Long Island in Hauppauge, New York. And the room was silent when I was reading it, and I'm like, what is going on? And the teacher said, keep going. And from there on, I figured, they said that she's going to be our copy editor, which meant I wrote most of the copy. I did most of the writing so all of a sudden I'm like not even sure what I want to do. And then the teacher is like, this is what you should do.
Wow.
You're going to be the leader of this. So you're the one who wins. So I pursued it. I got a journalism scholarship to the University of South Carolina, probably because I was from New York. So I checked some demographic boxes for them. And I became, as I went along, I became editor of my of the college newspaper. So I worked my way up. It just was a good fit for me to
So
make
who,
money while writing.
for sure. No, I understand. So talk to me a little bit about who a hero or an inspiration's been, whether personally or in journalism or writing or otherwise.
Well, of course, my teacher who discovered me, and I would say that I was inspired early on by the Holocaust writers Anne Frank and yeah, I'm drawing a blank, but there were different authors that I read along the way, and I felt like that uh, the Exodus, the person who wrote Exodus, the person who wrote letters for Rivka, the Holocaust stories, and they were what inspired me to pursue this that I'm writing about now, which is some of which is Jewish culture, and and I wrote my grandfather's story, which had to do with the Holocaust a little bit also.
So what was the first story or first assignment you had as a journalist that you felt like it really made an impact and it was just it felt good or it really reconfirmed that you needed to be a writer, you needed to be a journalist? Was there a moment like that, an article?
I know we were covering the downfall of the college president at my college in University of South Carolina, James Holderman, and I was pursuing that along with some of the professionals some of those that were already out in working in journalism, and I felt like that was uh, I felt like I was on par with the professionals, and so that maybe I could do this. So I think that being able to write about, um, dig into somebody's background and realize that they weren't following the rules, they were using their power and in an inappropriate way and making money off of that was he was misusing discretionary funds. So that's one of the stories. We covered at that time. We covered the Space Coast post Columbia crash,
Wow.
and we covered anything that happened in the world. We were covering it as journalists. So um,
Yeah. Who would be a dream interview for you to have as a journalist? Who would you love to meet, interview, and kind of pick their brain a little bit?
maybe Barbara Walters, or I don't know, Walter Cronkite can't anymore, but some of the greats in the industry. I I never thought about it, but whether what I'd do if I had the chance to meet them and ask how they come up with their questions and how did they become who they are, and um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So What is it that gets you up every day to do this work, to be a writer, to write your book, to work on all of your journalistic endeavors? What is that motivation for you every day?
I like to write. I like to play with words. And I like when people read my stories and are entertained or enlightened or um, say wow in some way or I get a lot of positive feedback on my writing. So I feel like that it was something that was meant to be for me to be able to do this.
So whether with your book or with your journalistic career, what's been one of your favorite fan letters?
I have had people write to me and say, this is the greatest book that I've read, or, it's on par. I read a lot, and this is on par with some of the stories that have really touched me in my life. I think people relate to the book. They find something within the story that's relevant to their own lives, whether they're Christian or they're Jewish. So when I hear that it's the greatest book that they ever read, that really warms somebody's heart. I was in LA this weekend and somebody who read my book, she's also a journalist, but she read my book. She didn't know I wrote a book. She read the book. She told her sister in-law across the country about the book. And so sight unseen, the sister-in-law had me speak to her group, her sisterhood book club, or women's club and I thought that was amazing that the connections that one can make and how a book can have an impact on somebody that they would feel confident enough to, based on what their sister-in-law told them, to host me in a book talk. That felt really good.
So speaking of the greatest book, what's one of the greatest books that you ever read early on in your life?
Greatest book. I mentioned Anne Frank. Greatest books. Um, I really did get a lot out of the Exodus, and Elie Wiesel's books are inspirational to me. Um, I was reading uh, diary. I was reading the commercial that products that other people were reading at the time. So I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm not. We. I'm not answering your
No,
question
you
with
are.
enough
No, you
power.
totally answered it, and you touched on it before. I just didn't know if there was maybe a seminal one. So in this long career that you've had of writing, what's the best advice you've ever gotten that's rang true for your profession?
Don't let anything get in your way. Don't let anyone tell you you can't be. I've had people say maybe you should do something else, or I've had people say maybe feature writing is not for you, or I don't think you should let anyone tell you what you should do or you shouldn't do in life. You know yourself what you're good at, what other people say you're good at. I think that we just got to listen to the voice in our own heads and then take some feedback from others, but don't trust that one person's opinion is should change your whole life.
So if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you give your younger self?
uh, don't give up. And you know you're at that point, I didn't know I would be an author, so this was a new branch for me for sure. So I would say that just go with how life flows for you, take chances and see where it leads you, and don't be afraid of taking those chances. Opportunities come and go, and maybe jump at a few of them that don't feel right, because you might end up being in that position anyway. Years later, I was offered a job or an opportunity to interview for a business reporter position, and I said no, I don't want to be a business writer. And years later, I became a business writer. So you really have to hindsight is 2020, but you should open your mind up to new possibilities.
So, of everything that you've done and accomplished in your career, what are you the proudest of?
The book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent 9 years or so trying to get a professional publisher for it. I did not want to have it self-published. And because I was a writer, why would I want to be self-published when I have the skills to be able to be professionally published? So I held out for that, and it worked out. And I'm benefiting from that. But maybe I could have been self-published all the way along. But I really feel like that it was worth the effort to continue pitching, and I won a number of awards. And I got to, in my career, I wouldn't have thought, but my articles have been in Forbes and Huffington Post and New York Daily News, and I wouldn't have thought that that was going to be my path. As a freelancer, I had a lot more opportunities than I had as a full-time journalist. So that I would not have thought taking off to raise my children and write this book um, and freelance that my name would be in such big publications also while I was doing it. So I feel like that I've been blessed.
So, if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and cover one event as a journalist, what event would you love to have gone back and covered?
Wow, these are really good questions. uh, Maybe Beatlemania.
Yeah.
Like what was going on at that time, or Woodstock. Well, that whole era. Um, Maybe I never wanted to be a war correspondent,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's amazing to be able to be there watching history unfold, and, with the Vietnam War and what people were saying at that time. I think that would be neat to get out of my comfort zone and be able to um, cover something, so powerful at the time, pop culture that wasn't in my world.
Yeah, for sure. So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your readers, everyone that you've known, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm very persistent and very determined, and I don't take a lot of vacation time. I just came back, but that's a lot for me to have come back, to have gone away for 4 days, 4 or 5 days. I am very persistent and hardcore, I would say. I'd rather accomplish something than take a vacation or have money. I just want to I really, the career comes not first because family and health comes first, but it's up there for me to feel fulfilled in life, I think is very important.
So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of Hands of Gold or reach out, learn more about what you're doing, see any of your past work, where can they go?
So I have a website, RoniRobbins.com, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and so I have everywhere. You'll find either Roni Robbins, Roni Kane Robbins, Kayne was my maiden name, or Hands of Gold novel, Hands of Gold. I'm all over social media, LinkedIn. So I really am. You Google me and you will find me, whether it's my articles for lately for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Medscape, or for my book.
Excellent.
So
Ronnie, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.